This video is sponsored by Dragon Shield, your destination for the best sleeves, deck boxes, and accessories in the multiverse. Purchases through the affiliate link below help the channel grow and improve. Across the infinite planes of the multiverse, there are those possessed of incredible power that abuse it. Individuals and institutions prey on the weak, feeble, and defenseless to fulfill ambitious desires. A king arbitrarily imprisons his subjects. A god spreads insidious lies to fool supplicants towards its worship. A demon corrupts the greedy and culls the weak. Injustice is common. The only defense of those attacked is to call to the heavens and attempt to evoke a higher power with prayer and hope. In a flash of blinding light, the call is answered. A sword sharpened by conviction and guided by purpose strikes the guilty. White magic dispels the darkness and sends vile creatures fleeing. The wielder is no angel, no god or deity, though she may garner a reputation as one. Her name remains on the lips of those she has saved, spread through hopeful whispers of salvation. Elspeth Tirel. Elspeth Tirel is a human planeswalker native to the plane of Capenna, with a rich history and story that has shaped her complex and at times tortured personality. After suffering cruelly at the hands of Phyrexian torturers in her youth, Elspeth quickly learned the dangers of corruption and absolute power. Jaded by early trauma, Tirel lives by the sword and tirelessly travels the multiverse to vanquish dark forces that have abused their station to prey on the weak. Inspired by a deep belief in freedom from oppression, Elspeth wages a solitary war on tyranny that treads the line between zealous and fanatical. Her resentment often blinds her judgment, especially when facing the Phyrexians, as nightmares from the past are reborn. She fights with temerity to ensure that no more need suffer as she had. Tirel is drawn to the virtues and stability offered by divine creatures. She worshipped the angels of Bant for a time, and the flavor text of Metropolis Angel quotes her in stating that angels are living proof that power does not always lead to corruption. She's equally drawn to the gods of Theros for orienting her beliefs, especially with the white-aligned Heliod, who shares many of her deepest values. Elspeth possesses a profound sense of unity, of community and solidarity that deeply entrench her in the powers offered by white mana. She embodies its aspects of righteousness and equality, which explains her vehemence towards demons, zombies, Phyrexians, anything representative of black mana, white's opposite. As a master of white mana, Elspeth excels in magic used to stir morale, bolster defenses, and even amass an army with which to crusade against forces of evil. We see this in the abilities of several of her planeswalker cards. In Elspeth Tirel and Elspeth Sun's Champion, she can call forth a mass of soldiers with expedience. Resplendent and Knight-errant highlight her ability to champion another, imbuing them with greater strength and skill. Her incantations emit wards of protective magic that shield allies against pestilence or corruption. But Elspeth's skill go beyond mere magecraft. After years spent training with Bant's rigid martial cast, Elspeth is an unrivaled swordsmaster who cleaves through waves of enemies with ease and dazzles foes before landing lethal strikes. Tirel has acquired arms of special significance in her travels, including the Therosian Sword of Chaos and Godsend, forged by the hands of deities, and more recently, the halo-infused blade Luxior. Elspeth expertly marries her martial and mystical prowess, utilizing sword art and gesticulations to channel powerful spells through her blade to fell great demons or hordes of desecrated, as seen in the card's Soul Parry. Elspeth is a self-stylized knight-errant, cloaked in her hallmark white cowl and robes, most vividly displayed in her entry card Elspeth Knight-errant. Girded for battle, she has sworn monastic oaths to fervently pursue justice, upholding the values she most cherishes. Tirel sojourns the blind eternities to liberate the oppressed, foster community, smite the contemptible, and empower the commoner through inspirational leadership. But her journey is deeper than the selfless altruism displayed on its surface. Central to Elspeth's beliefs in white mana philosophy is a desire for shared bonds, a sense of belonging that has for much of her life eluded her. The sentiment is apparent in the flavor text of Crusade, in which she states, "Finally, I understand. Home isn't where you rest, it's what you fight for." Elspeth finds it, if only for a moment, in the holy orders of Bant on the plane of Alara, and again on Theros as champion of the sun god Heliod. This pursuit of community is an attempt, however, to mask a larger existential dread. The tragedy of Elspeth Tirel is that she is a knight without cause, a power without purpose. She travels the plains in search of fulfillment, of meaning to her life. She survived the crucible of torture and trauma. She possesses great power and potential, but she has yet to discover her role in the greater multiverse. The anxieties of the future are fueled by ruminations of the past. Elspeth's bright light is dimmed by nightmares that plague her on sleepless nights. Her failures, her pain of past mistakes, and the faces of loved ones, now departed as consequence of her actions, haunt Elspeth. She's shackled to guilt and remorse. Tirel seeks vindication in the purifying flames of war, an exemplar of righteous fury for others and a means of expiating her own sins. The irony of her situation is that each potential charge into the fray, each sword crossed with evil, leaves behind fallen comrades and promises broken. Elspeth has thus turned inward, isolated by misery. Until she can release herself from her grim past and actualize her future purpose, she will remain tormented, her bright flame snuffed by darkness. But she's more significant than she realizes, and Elspeth may play a vital role in determining the fate of the multiverse as the threat of new Phyrexia emerges. To fully understand how, we must scrutinize Elspeth's past. But before we do, I'd like to take a moment and highlight some comment courtesy that shows what an amazing community we have on the channel. This one comes from Richard Williams, who says, "Your best narration yet. I've heard this aspect of magic lore numerous times, but your take on the most influential saga in the game really stands out. Proud to be a subscriber. Keep up the outstanding work." Thanks so much, Richard, for the kind words and support. I'm grateful for everyone who tunes in and helps shape this community. Keep spreading the love in the comments. Elspeth Tirel's origins were long shrouded in mystery. All that was known of her youth came in brief mentions of grueling years tormented in prison and tortured at the hands of Phyrexia. We now know that Elspeth is a native of Capenna, a once glorious and knightly realm that fell to ruin under an inexorable Phyrexian invasion centuries ago. All that remained was the magically protected, resplendent city of New Capenna, which blossomed into the bustling metropolis of today. Beyond the safety of the city's lustrous walls, small groups of wandering nomads struggle amongst the desolate wastes, descendants of the invasion survivors who couldn't reach New Capenna before its gates were barred. Elspeth was born to one such group. Though Phyrexia was defeated, droves of abominations yet prowl the land and prey on survivor camps. It's assumed that young Elspeth's family fell victim to Phyrexian raids. Countless were slaughtered, the girl taken alive and imprisoned within a metal cage. For some time, Elspeth remained a prisoner of the Phyrexians, ruthlessly tortured for no purpose besides their satisfaction. Rather than forfeit her life to captors, an inner drive pushed Elspeth to escape towards freedom. Her plan was thwarted before it could be realized, and for her insolence, the girl was strapped to a laboratory table and prepared for horrifying vivisection. Desperate and fearful, Elspeth struggled like a cornered beast until something long buried within caught fire and ignited. Tirel's spark lit, and she ascended to Planeswalker, the young girl blindly slipping towards escape in the space between realms. Her experience as Phyrexia's captive would have profound effects on molding Elspeth's character as she developed to maturity, deep gashes in her psyche that would scar but never fully heal. Chiefly, it shattered any conception of simple, idyllic existence, the horrors of evil etched on her skin. It was also a lesson in power. Those who have it abuse it, and those without often succumb to depredation. Finally, it fills Elspeth with an intense hatred towards Phyrexia. With these truths painfully endured, Elspeth Tirel stumbles through the blind eternities and lands on Theros, a plane of myths and gods. Elspeth's disoriented and confused following her first planeswalk, but relishes the freedom gained from imprisonment. She finds herself alone and hesitant, afraid of what might lurk in this strange world. Though her stay on Theros is brief, young Elspeth witnesses a battle between the gods Perforos and Heliod unfold across the firmament. Tirel's awestruck by their show of power and frightened of their abilities. As the celestial beings clash, Perforos loses his weapon, the Sword of Chaos, a blade sculpted in his legendary forge with the capacity to cut through the starry substance of Nyx, which plummets from the sky towards the mortal realm below. Elspeth, instinctively grasps for the blade before planeswalking away. The Sword of Chaos will prove invaluable as a weapon and meditative focus for Tirel in the years to come. Young Elspeth journeys across the multiverse in pursuit of belonging. Forcefully stripped of childhood fantasy, of family and community, Elspeth longs for stability. She travels across countless planes, but in each finds herself an outsider, or finds that those in power prey on the defenseless. Her experience leaves her jaded and disillusioned. Finally, as her legs buckle under weary searching, Elspeth finds herself on Bant, a shard of the fractured plane of Alara, guided by angels and ruled through a rigid caste system. Tirel felt herself as a ship unmoored. The angels of Bant offered an anchor of stability. She endured oppression under Phyrexia on Capenna, briefly witnessed the fickle spite of Therosian gods. But on Bant, Elspeth's trepidation towards power was cast aside in the resplendent embrace of Alara's angelic host. The leaders of Bant exemplified power in its purest form, using it to shepherd the masses, protect them, and act as symbols of devotion. Tirel would use them as examples to shape her own moral code as she fell under the brilliant sway of Bant's host. While the angels provided spiritual nourishment, Elspeth cultivated her mind and body through dedication to Bant's knightly caste. In Valeron, she trained as a squire under elite warriors meticulously studying swordplay, mounted combat, and foundational etiquette. She proved to be a most devoted student, and after becoming the youngest squire dubbed to knighthood, joined the ranks of Bant's elite, which we can see in the card Elspeth Knight-errant. The peace and stability offered by this Alaran Paradise nurtured in Tirel a sense of belonging that had been absent. She was empowered by purpose which allayed the anxieties of her youth and allowed her time to sharpen her mind while developing masterful proficiency in sword skill and mystical casting. Her sense of duty and honor solidified, which we see in the flavor text of Guardians of Akrasa. Only by the bravery of those who put loyalty above glory is our home kept safe. As Tirel earns sigils for heroic deeds done, she accrues her own retinue of loyal retainers and squires. One such is the rocks depicted in the card Dauntless Escort, whose flavor text reads, Elspeth's squires do not seek advancement. For them, no knightly glory could surpass the glory of serving their champion. And whose ability highlights the altruistic self-sacrifice Elspeth cultivates within herself and those around her. But her picturesque fantasy on Alara was shattered with the arrival of fellow planeswalker Johnny Goldmane. The Leonin's broken body plummeted from the sky as Elspeth was patrolling Valeron's borders and using her healing powers over white mana, nursed the Johnny to health. A filigree bond connected the two during his convalescence, one that will strengthen into a resolute and profound friendship. But immediately, a Johnny has come with dark tidings. Their worlds are closer than Elspeth realizes, and the conflux of Alara is fast approaching as its disparate shards once more converge. Borders will explode, incursion zones will decimate and alter the landscape, and the natives of each shard, so long estranged, will reunite in bloody conflict. Elspeth played an integral role in the Conflux War, bearing arms in Bant's defense and leading troops against the unholy abominations of Grixis or the cold, calculating mages of Esper. Tirel displayed her martial prowess on the battlefield, where she inspired through example and effortlessly dispatched hordes of enemies. Despite her efforts, the relentless zombies and demons of Grixis, beings Bant had not seen before, overwhelmed her post near Giltspire Castle and brought it to ruin. Elspeth witnessed horror unfold as those under her command, those whose safeguarding she was responsible for, were brutally slaughtered. With anguish building, Elspeth cast away her vows and knightly dictates to unleash her true devastating potential. The woman flared with white-hot resentment, and the waves of magic that poured from her body obliterated the damned, while at the same time revived her fallen comrades. We see this heroic feat on display in the art of Clarion Ultimatum, which upon close inspection illustrates a mounted Elspeth in the background, surrounded by an aura of light and commanding serried troops. While those who witnessed Elspeth's heroism lauded her as an exemplar of grace, something within Elspeth cracked. Bant was not her home, its people not her charge. What right did she have to alter their fates? She played at knight-errant, but to what end? Those around her were dead or dying as the Conflux War consumed all. their faces ever present in Tirel's mind. Such nagging questions and building remorse are depicted in the card Ardent Plea, which sees a confused Tirel on bent knees asking the angels for guidance. Elspeth had deluded herself into believing she belonged on Bant, but the weight of duty, of her sigils earned, proved too great to bear. Despair once again gripped the woman as the hole in Elspeth's heart emerged again. Bant had been a pleasant distraction, but the conflux cost Elspeth the lives of those she cherished and left her bitter. Angered by her failures and once more bereft of purpose, Elspeth leaves Bant behind to planeswalk into an uncertain future. Dejected and disillusioned, Tirel journeyed to the familiar swamps of Urborg on Dominaria, where she lamented Bant's fate and allowed the guilt of failure to consume her soul. To forget the deaths of those she had left, Elspeth lost herself within Urborg's gladiatorial pits, using stances and strikes long ingrained from years of training to clear her mind, sharpen her focus, force her to think only of the present. Her knightly skills won Elspeth notoriety in gladiatorial bouts, and for a time she allowed anger and anguish to prevail. But a fateful encounter soon sparked painful memories and pulled her from meditative reverie. In the pit, she faced an opponent that had branded on his body the symbol of Phyrexia. Upon seeing this, the repressed emotion of Elspeth's traumatic imprisonment swelled within, and she fell into blind fury. Her opponent, a planeswalker and native of Mirrodin named Koth, was spared by the timely arrival of a Johnny Goldmane, who tracked Elspeth after the events of Alara. The Leonin pleaded with Tirel and insisted she could still do good, that Bant still needed her. Her remorse proved too great, however, and Elspeth refused. Goldmane berated her decision of abandonment before planeswalking. In Urborg, Elspeth reached a personal nadir. She lost hope in herself and in the multiverse for the grim realities it presented. But Koth offered an opportunity to pull herself out from melancholy and once more find meaning in action. The Mirran planeswalker carried dire information. His home world was gripped by a strange affliction that corrupted both body and mind. This contagion, called glistening oil, twisted the environment and transformed the inhabitants, giving rise to the first generations of new Phyrexians. With his plane diseased and time in short supply, Koth sought allies and so recruited Elspeth and the Urborg planeswalker Venser to uncover the cause of Mirrodin's precarious situation. Stirred from her repentance by past memories, Elspeth agrees to join Koth in cleansing the plane and crushing the Phyrexians, a group she holds in derisive contempt. Mirrodin proved a dangerous and transformative crucible for Elspeth, forced to confront her childhood tormentors, face her nightmares, and relive painful experiences long forgotten. The glistening oil was highly communicable and transmitted across all of Mirrodin, seen in cards like Inexorable Tide and Contagion Engine, which found itself in a more desperate situation than previously thought. Those inhabitants not infected were besieged on all sides by unrelenting waves of new Phyrexians pouring forth from the depths of the plane. Elspeth, Koth, and Venser led a harrowing journey through hostile territory centered on locating the planeswalker Karn, master of Mirrodin and friend to Venser, and determining his fate. Several times their party brushed with Phyrexians, and each proved an insurmountable challenge for Elspeth. Their presence seized her with fear, transported her to past days of trauma and torture. She was unable to fight, unable to move. After several grueling days, encamped with Mirran partisans for the night, a local berated Elspeth for her lack of courage, for not having the will to fight. The scathing invective festered within Tirel, who thought on her time as a knight of Bant, how she had vowed to protect the meek and dauntlessly plunge headlong into danger. White-hot emotion burned within Elspeth, the fear that had for so long dominated her character, replaced with inextinguishable anger, ire, and a desire for action. She looked at the Mirran plight and knew she possessed the ability to save countless and was duty-bound to do so. Her resolution is on display in the flavor text of Soul Parry, which reads, "I was called to this world of steel, and it will be my steel that answers." Consumed by such strong emotion, Elspeth proved an indispensable guardian for the Mirran partisans and warrior for Koth and Venser. The remaining journey saw Elspeth hack through waves of Phyrexians in cathartic fury. Her light, a beacon for the Mirran resistance, and her valor a symbol of hope for the beleaguered plane that soon placed its reverence and trust in her. Venser, Koth and Elspeth made their way to New Phyrexia's inner sanctums, where they found Karn corrupted beyond redemption by glistening oil. Surrounded by Phyrexians with few options remaining, Venser sacrificed his life in Planeswalker Spark for Karn, cleansing the silver golem of corruption and liberating him from Phyrexia's grip. Tirel had little time to mourn Venser, and instead avenged him by taking up Blade with Koth and leading Mirrodin forces against New Phyrexia. Though they fought deftly and protected countless, little could be done to save the plane that had been at its very core corrupted by the contagion seen in Phyrexia's core. Mirrodins buckled from relentless assaults, thousands slaughtered or captured and transformed into completed Phyrexians. The glimmer of hope had been snuffed, but Elspeth refused to drop her arms. Anger and desperation drove her wild. Phyrexians had already broken her home plane. She couldn't bear to witness Mirrodin share its fate. Tirel plunged into battle with no regard for her own life, a life that Koth could ill afford to lose. During their failed attempt to destroy the seat of New Phyrexia's power, Koth encased a grievously wounded Elspeth in stone and rendered her immobile. As Phyrexians descended, she had no choice but to flee, once again leaving an embattled plane behind to succumb to evil's predations due to her failure. Her grief is captured in the art and flavor text of Remember the Fallen, which reads, "When the Mirrodins had fallen, Planeswalkers carried the burden of remembrance." Distraught, wounded, and terribly alone, Elspeth sought familiarity and stability. She returned to the land of gods and planeswalked to Theros. Theros is a plane that offers in abundance what had been deprived to Elspeth: faith, permanence, stability. It's a realm in which devotion yields tangible power and belief alters reality. Shepherded by a pantheon of gods from the firmament of Nyx, Elspeth seeks to understand the deities, for they act as promising entities in which to place her loyalty, much as the angels of Bant had. Perhaps guided by worship, Elspeth can once again anchor herself to purpose and dispel her growing anxieties. We hear this in the flavor text of Commune with the Gods. For the first time in many years, Elspeth asked for help. But while orienting herself in the city of Akros, Heliod, the wide-aligned god of the sun, confronts Elspeth. He recognizes the sword of chaos sheathed at her side, stolen years ago from Perforos, and flies into blind rage. The god's attack is rebuffed. In shock of Elspeth's capabilities and threatened by her potential, Heliod transforms the sword into an unwieldy and awkward sword spear. He bestows upon Elspeth the godsend, and issues a quest to seek him out at his temple in Miletus. The path from Akros to Miletus is harrowing and fraught with myriad dangers. Though initially burdened by her new weapon, Elspeth's martial training on Bant proves fortuitous as she quickly asserts mastery over the godsend. She crosses paths with monstrous beasts, dispatches monsters of myth, and even the gods take notice as word spreads of her legendary deeds in Divine Blade. This earns renown for Tirel across all of Theros. Her trials are catalogued in the epic poem The Theriad, which appears in the flavor text of several cards throughout the block. Though not officially stated, it can be assumed that she is the nameless champion whose accolades are immortalized. Such actions are heard in the flavor text of Banishing Light. The champion reached for a stone, and Heliod placed the sun into her hand. And Cyclops of One-Eyed Pass. The champion armed herself to face the Cyclops, heedless of her companion's despair. "How you defeat it with only one spear?" asked young Althemone. The champion raised her weapon. "It has but one eye." So great is her notoriety, in fact, that Elspeth's image is immortalized in artwork around Theros, which we see in the tiled fresco in the art of Hall of Triumph. As she approaches the outskirts of marbled Miletus on the final leg of her journey, news reaches Elspeth of Pelukranos. Dubbed the World Eater for its insatiable hunger and domineering stature, Pelukranos is a hydra in whose voracious path precariously sits Miletus. None have stopped it, and Pelukranos has laid low the strongest warriors thrown at it. Elspeth thrusts herself in the beast's way without hesitation and combines her sword spear with the blades of Miletus's elite guard, led by the formidable Daxos. For hours the group fights Pelukranos, but each head slain from the Hydra spawns countless more. In a dizzying display of sword skill and heroism, Elspeth severs all the monster's heads in a precise killing blow. In act of valor, highlighted in the illustration of Vanquish the Foul. Though many lives were lost, Elspeth enters the gates of Meletus a hero, the sun's champion. Having earned Heliod's favor, Elspeth remains among the god's temple acolytes, burying her inner demons and past trauma through communal devotion. Heliod acts as a radiant glow to dispel the darkness within her heart. It's here that Tirel forms a romantic relationship with Daxos, one of Heliod's most fervent warriors, and the two grow close. But Elspeth's rest ends when dire news comes of a Minotaur assault on Akros. Again, the Sun's champion launches herself into the crucible of battle and coordinates the city's defense alongside its rulers. Through strategic maneuvering and ardent pleas for the god's support, Akros staves off the attack. The victors hold a grand feast, a celebratory revel that carries long into the night. Elspeth and Daxos retire to the intimate privacy of their tent, but as the pair lie dreaming, the planeswalker Xenagos intervenes. The satyr instigated the siege of Akros and subsequent revel to enact a ritual that would propel him to godhood. All that remained was a sacrifice. Under cover of darkness, the satyr casts a spell to twist Elspeth's mind and force her to relive battle with Phyrexian obliterators. She thrusts out with her spear in desperate confusion and impales the Phyrexian, but as she shakes off the spell's effect, finds only Daxos stabbed through the heart by her hand. This completes Xenagos' ritual and launches the newly ascended god into Nyx, which is illustrated in the card Xenagos, God of Revels. Tears swell in Elspeth's eyes, and she laments her lover's death. She swears cold vengeance against the being responsible and pursues Xenagos to Nyx, her scorn palpable in the flavortext of mischief and mayhem. The false god Xenagos treats the whole world as his rollick site. If his whims are left unchecked, Theros will be reduced to rubble and ashes. To gain entry into the ethereal realm of gods, Elspeth must journey to the temple of Nykthos at the edge of the world. Her unintentional murder of Daxos, however, earns Tirel the ire of Heliod, her chase of Xenagos made dangerous by the sun god's hostile pursuit. Elspeth comes across a familiar face among Theros' Leonin, her old friend Ajani Goldmane, who is visiting the plane. As a loyal companion who inspires faith and lifts others to their realized potential, Elspeth seeks Ajani's assistance in retribution. Her own faith in the gods has recently been shaken, and Tirel needs not just a sword, but a shoulder to offer conciliatory support, highlighted in the illustration of Solidarity of Heroes. The pair overcome great obstacles to reach Nykthos, but the greatest yet remains. Elspeth must pass an ordeal of the gods, a test of will, to unlock the gate to Nyx. Against Ajani's warning, Elspeth chooses the ordeal of black-aligned Erebos, god of the dead and underworld. Tirel endures a vision that reveals a future that could have been, could still be, on idyllic Bant, surrounded by the loving embrace of a family on a peaceful homestead of her own. In it, she has a beautiful daughter and loving husband. This is a glimpse into Elspeth's very soul, an image of what she yearns for. It could all be realized if she drinks from the goblet offered her. The tragedy of Elspeth's existence is that she believes she is unfit for happiness, undeserving of love and peace. She's fearful that once gained, it will all be destroyed and leave her as she already is, painfully isolated. Duty, honor, sacrifice pull her back to reality, and Elspeth refuses the offer. Passing Erebos' test, and is granted entry into Nyx, seen in the art of the card Worst Fears. Elspeth feared that her trespass into Nyx would not go unanswered. Once in the starry realm of the gods, Tirel confronts deceitful Xenagos. Filled with fury and driven by the memory of Daxos, Elspeth challenges a god and does battle against the satyr. Armed with the godsend, a blade capable of cutting through the ethereal substance of Nyx, Elspeth repays Xenagos for his vile actions and pierces the god of revels through the heart, seen in the art of Deicide, whose flavortext reads a simple statement: "It is done." Vengeance for Daxos is complete. Discontent with mere retribution, Elspeth beseeches Erebos with an offer. She'll forfeit her own life for Daxos, so that he may return to the realm of the living. Erebos relishes the potential to take the sun's champion from his rival Heliod, and the deal is struck. Heliod arrives before Elspeth and Ajani can escape Nyx and bars their passage. Fuming from his champion's betrayal and fearful of her threat to his own divinity, Heliod wrests the godsend from Elspeth and drives its blade through her heart. Shock overwhelms Ajani, who drags his wounded companion from Nyx. Elspeth grows weak. Her lifeblood flows from mortal wounds. As the light fades, she takes solace in the peaceful oblivion death offers. So long she has been dogged by trauma, mistakes, loneliness, and isolation. In death she may finally rest. But nothing is permanent on Theros, not even death, and agents of Erebos quickly surround the Planeswalker to claim her. Ajani can do little but watch as his valiant friend is taken beyond mortality. Elspeth is consigned to spend eternity in the hopeless underworld. The Planeswalker's fate in the underworld is ambiguous, not merely due to the nature of death on Theros, an amorphous and impermanent concept, but because of the failed release of the story surrounding Beyond Death set. Fragments and a brief story summary are all that are given. What we do know is that Elspeth's soul and her deeds as a warrior proved worthy enough to grant her entry to Elysia, the underworld's idyllic purgatory, where her wayward spirit might finally discover peace. But Elspeth is continually haunted by her past. She relives increasingly visceral nightmares, her dreams taking on new horrific forms. The ever-present Phyrexian-induced trauma flashes in her mind. Her abandonment and loss of loved ones on Bant shatters her heart. But the recent death of Daxos by her hands plunges Elspeth into a bottomless pit of guilt. She replays the event incessantly in her dreams as a form of self-flagellation, seen in the art of the card Agonizing Remorse, whose flavor text reads, "The sharp memory of Daxos' death stabbed into Elspeth's soul." Tirel's dreams, however, aren't her own. The Planeswalker Ashiok lurks in the shattered corners of Theros, a nightmare mage that gains power through fear and infiltrates the minds of their victims to draw forth darkest terror. Ashiok finds Elspeth's atrocity-filled past irresistible and haunts Tirel, plaguing her with palpable nightmares, which we see in the cards Ashiok's Erasure and Elspeth's Nightmare. During such torment, Elspeth draws a weapon to defend herself from a Phyrexian obliterator, and when she comes to, the Planeswalker grips the blade from her dream. Faith and belief are powerful forces on Theros. They've granted substance to Tirel's ethereal weapon, a shadowy reflection of Heliod's Sunspear Crusaor, dubbed the Shadow Spear, which is displayed in the card bearing the name. In the underworld, news reaches Elspeth of a disruption in Theros' metaphysical structure caused by warring between the gods, which results in fissures torn through reality. Rifts that connect the underworld to the mortal realm, depicted in the art of Underworld Breach. She sees this as a sign that her life might still have purpose for the good of the multiverse, and with Shadow Spear in hand, journeys to the rifts. Her path proves arduous, and Elspeth is hunted by Klothys, the god of destiny, as her attempted reversal of fortune stirs the god's ire. Klothys sends forth her agent of fate Calyx to intercept Tirel and prevent escape from the underworld, which is highlighted in the card Relentless Pursuit. Several times they clash, but with great martial training and a renewed desire burning within, Elspeth emerges victorious. With each step taken, with each foe, monster, spirit vanquished, Elspeth and her Shadow Spear garner an aura of renown. The sun god's nemesis cultivates her own retinue of devoted followers. Their belief in Elspeth buoys her strength as she touts the Shadow Spear as the true Crusaor. We see her loyalists in cards like Elspeth's Devotee and Sunlit Hoplite, whose flavor text reads, "Even in her absence, the light Elspeth kindled in our hearts never faltered." As Tirel approaches the rifts, Heliod himself appears and bars her exit from the underworld. Filled with enmity towards her murderer, regret for her misplaced trust, and burning anger for retribution, Elspeth strikes the sun god. Heliod's Crusaor shatters under the weight of belief and devotion imbued into Elspeth's Shadow Spear, and the god is defeated. He's left defenseless and significantly weakened. In exchange for his eternal rival, Erebos grants Tirel safe conduct through the gates. She's reborn, pulled from deep despair, and instilled with new conviction. Her trial through the underworld and ultimate rebirth are beautifully immortalized in the saga, Elspeth Conquers Death. Elspeth's experience on Theros disabuses her of the notion that gods are altruistic and worthy of devotion. Coincidentally, she finds herself as the central figure of a growing cult of followers. With her magnanimity, with her strength of character and resolute guiding light, Elspeth assumes the mantle of worshipped hero, easily and naturally, perhaps hinting at a deeper quality, an innate divinity that might be revealed in the future. With her freedom won and life restored, Elspeth planeswalks away from the world of myth. The next chapter of Elspeth's interminable quest for belonging brings the Planeswalker to Capenna, the plane of her birth, to which she hasn't returned since her ascension, where she is thrust into the intrigues surrounding New Capenna and must face old foes to heal past scars. Tirel is shocked by the glamorous paradise of New Capenna, a city that not only survived the Phyrexian attack centuries ago, but has entirely forgotten its history and the lingering threat posed by abominations that yet stalk the wastes beyond the cityscape. Upon closer scrutiny, Elspeth learns that New Capenna was saved through the sacrifice of the Plains Angels, who had erected a protective barrier around the city to thwart Phyrexian incursion. But no angels remain. Betrayed by Capenna's demons, they were trapped into stasis, their bodies and holy essence distilled into the magical substance Halo. Halo was the angels' parting gift, a secret weapon imbued with the capacity to destroy Phyrexia's armies in ages past. It's now the lifeblood and currency of Capenna. Demonic crime lords use its influence to rule over the glitzy cityscape. Elspeth spends her time on Capenna uncovering the truth of its history and learning the nature of Halo, which brings her into the orbit of Xander and his Maestro's crime family. Their extensive collection of art and history offers her an avenue for discovery, which is highlighted in the art and flavortext of An Offer You Can't Refuse. Elspeth wanted answers. Xander needed a spy. Their paths were destined to cross. If understood, Tirel could use Halo to expiate herself of failures on Mirrodin and cleanse the plane of glistening oil. Her pursuit leads Elspeth to Giada, a diminutive orphan possessed of incredible and rare potential. With a thought and a touch, the young girl can turn any material into pure Halo. In a city where the substance acts as currency, elixir, and power, Giada is hunted by the ruling criminal families. For her part, Elspeth's drawn to Giada's innocent purity, warming aura, and protects the girl during the Planeswalker Obnixilus's explosive coup d'etat, which we see in the card Daring Escape. Elspeth confronts Nixilus, but is overpowered by the demon. Before he strikes a killing blow, Giada sacrifices herself, transforming into pure Halo to revive Elspeth and bestow upon the knight-errant Luxior, a divine blade infused with the mystical substance on display in the art of the card that bears its name. Tirel is stunned by the girl's altruism and mourns yet another life lost on her watch, but she's also invigorated. Filled with true purpose which had for so long eluded her, Elspeth realizes she holds the key to New Phyrexia's defeat in Halo, and vows that she won't rest until the vile threat is eradicated from the multiverse. A noteworthy mention is that while on Capenna, Elspeth exudes a faint, angelic golden glow, perhaps indicative of a forgotten but divine origin. Elspeth's purpose carries her to Dominaria, and the influence of the interplanar organization of planeswalking peacekeepers known as the Gatewatch, where she's recruited to join their ranks. Tirel's martial prowess, inspiring aura, and past experience fighting Phyrexians on Mirrodin will prove invaluable as the Gatewatch assembles a contingent of walkers to spearhead a direct strike against New Phyrexia. While discussing plans with the Gatewatch, hard news strikes Tirel of Ajani Goldmane's completion and conversion to Phyrexia. Her most loyal companion, the one in whom Elspeth placed her deepest trust and who believed in her great potential, has been imprisoned and forcefully transformed into a member of her base enemy, a force for which she holds only boiling resentment. The news is enough to shatter Elspeth, as she can add Ajani's name to the increasing list of people she has failed. Goldmane had championed Elspeth's character to the Gatewatch, stating that she was the leader they needed, the one they should trust to end Phyrexia, but Elspeth is initially reticent to their plan. She's fought against Elish Norn and Phyrexia before. A strike against them is suicidal, and warns against it. She requires time to settle emotionally from Ajani's fate and to familiarize herself with the Gatewatch. During her rest, the Dryad Planeswalker Wren approaches and reads Elspeth's aura, piercing into her soul to uncover that Tirel is possessed of two songs. She lives two lives, one in light and one in shadow. This refers to her nightmarish youth, a dark shackle that stains with black ink, and her knightly facade, the veneer of bravery and selfless protection she displays to the world. But again, it might hint at something deeper. One life as a human mortal, the other angelic and divine, but buried deep within. While the Gatewatch seek to uncover clues of the past, Elspeth marshals a hurried defense of their compound as waves of new Phyrexian invaders attack. Through deft sword skill and combined mystical barrages with the Archmage Joda, Tirel obliterates the first wave of Phyrexians. Without reprieve, she's attacked by Rona, leader of the Strike Force, and then again by Tezzeret, an accomplice to New Phyrexia's machinations. He warns her that those in opposition to Phyrexia will not survive the coming conflict, and advises Tirel to abandon the hope. But news of Ajani, battle with Phyrexians, rebirth on Theros, all have strengthened Elspeth's resolve and emboldened her. In a moment of internal transformation and clarity, Elspeth finally casts the dark shadow of her past and fully embraces her purpose. Armed with Halo, with grim determination and inviolable hope, Tirel vows to lead the Gatewatch and strike at the very heart of New Phyrexia. Elspeth Tirel is a complex marriage of conflicting character personalities interwoven to produce a deeply nuanced individual. Externally, she presents an unassailable front of light, inspiration, and knightly valor, leading from the fore and bolstering those around her to confront evil wherever it lurks. Juxtaposed to this stable exterior is an internal darkness that haunts Elspeth at every step. Trauma, failure, guilt, anguish, all are old companions and pursue her where she runs. But she's grown in her years, past experiences shaping her into an individual burning with glorious purpose. Elspeth's formative years on Bant cultivated her martial skills and calibrated her moral compass. The heartache on Mirrodin taught Tirel perseverance and the preservation of all that is good. She journeyed through the crucible of death on Theros and emerged with newfound personal meaning. Elspeth Tirel possesses a rare anti-fragility beyond mere resilience. Like the Hydra she faced in the past, Elspeth grows stronger with each blow dealt her. She's poised to lead the Gatewatch into the heart of New Phyrexia. What remains to be seen is if this knight-errant of legendary renown will prove enough to banish the dark cloud of Phyrexia looming beyond the horizon. Thank you so much for watching and listening to Elspeth Tirel's Search for Meaning. Now I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts on the knight-errant and the greater role she has yet to play, as well as suggestions for future videos in the comments below. And if you're a fan of lore and storytelling, consider subscribing to the channel or checking out the podcast where content is uploaded frequently. Again, a huge shout out to all of my Patreon supporters who make all of this possible. I couldn't do it without their spectacular patronage. If you're interested in becoming a lore luminary for access to me, a great community, and early video drops, check out the link below or head to patreon.com/Lorebrarians to learn more. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.